So first story that we're going to get to is CJ Hopkins. I love CJ Hopkins. He did something really cool this week. Last week. He went to London. Now he lives in Germany. Traveled to London, and they went to an event with Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, and Russell Brand was on stage. And so he's going to talk about that, but he's also going to talk about the real reason why he was in London, which was even more fascinating. So let's get to CJ's article, which is Fear and Loathing in the City of Westminster, cjhopkins.substack.com. Check that out. Oh, Gamer Oz. What's up, guys? Hope you're feeling better, Oz. All right, so you have all of the Mickey Mouse, similar faces in the crowd. But he says, our descent into City Airport was like the dropship scene in the movie Aliens. The BA City Flyer Embraer 190, a narrow-body twin-engine airliner, rolled over in a 40-degree bank and started bucking like a mechanical bull. Stimulated chimes began chiming frantically, and flight attendants bolted for their seats. The German businessman in the seat beside me, obviously a nervous flyer, immediately adopted the brace position. I gripped his shoulder reassuringly and shouted in his ear like a drunken redneck, "We're on an express elevator to hell, going down!" Fucking love this guy.
Mayday, mayday.
And so began my latest trip to London. This time I wasn't there to talk to the left or to hunt down endoparasitoid xenomorphs, which he had done before. I was there on serious conspiracy theorist business, which I explained to the chirpy MI6 operative posing as a survey taker that followed me out of border control, asking questions about my nation of residence and my experience with the passport scanners, and so on. She was wearing one of those rubber Mission Impossible masks that made her look like a middle-aged British woman, and funny. As I waited for an opportunity, head fake, juked right, lost her in the crowd. And as I entered the arrivals library, I turned and shouted in her general direction, "Not my first rodeo, Mr. Phelps." I don't know what was up with all this shouting. I've been experimenting with different types of medication for the sinus condition I've had for months. My sinus specialist diagnosed me with long or possibly permanent COVID, or some yet to be named debilitating syndrome caused by some other bioweapon that produces cold and flu-like symptoms and has a survival rate of 99.8%. So maybe it was a bad reaction to my meds. Whatever it was, I was feeling jumpy. So good. And the climate change apocalypse didn't help. Emerging from the tube in Westminster was like walking into an enormous open-air sauna. Bodies were lying all around on the sidewalks. AFP photographers in hazmat suits were taking pictures of the carnage. Herds of corpulent American tourists staggered through the streets in semi-fugue states, sweating profusely and thumbing their phones like an invasion of alien albino hippos trying to call up their UAPs and arrange for immediate emergency extraction. So good. I pushed and shoved and elbowed my way down Tothill Street to my pod hotel, checked in, and proceeded to hopelessly get lost in the maze of identical Kubrickian hallways that eventually led me to my luxury pod and cleaned myself up for the night's festivities. He's literally describing like dystopia in the future. It's great. He says, what was I doing back in London in the middle of a heat wave? Well, okay, I'm allowed to tell you about it now. As you're probably aware, Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, and Russell Brand were doing this public event last Thursday. So this was actually part one of it. I believe is available on Rumble right now. Really, I can't wait to see the other half of it. He says, but that's not really what I was there for. Not that Thursday event wasn't fun. It was, despite the rather pricey tickets. There was a good-sized house and spirits were high. Right? Russell Brand was in top form, pouring out torrents of intellectual free association like an English Neil Cassidy and nailing the punchlines of all the jokes. Michael was also firing on all cylinders, and he worked the house like a seasoned politician, whipping the crowd into a veritable frenzy of anti-totalitarian fervor. Stella Assange took the stage at one point and briefed us on the official crucifixion of her husband, which sadly now looks like a fait accompli. Matt,
Yep.
free Julian Assange. Matt, who had just made it to London that morning and was so jet-lagged and deliriously sleep-deprived, dispensed with the speech he had rewritten on the plane and just winged it and somehow pulled it off because that, as they say, is showbiz. And that's Matt, because he's ridiculous. Here's the money part of Matt's speech, which he paraphrased in London, emphasis mine, which was, quote, what Michael and I were looking at was something new, an internet-age approach to political control that uses brute digital force to alter reality itself. We certainly saw plenty of examples of censorship and deplatforming and government collaboration in those efforts. However, it's clear that the idea behind the sweeping system of digital surveillance, combined with thousands or even millions of subtle rewards and punishments built into the online experience, is to condition people to censor themselves. Yeah, powerful. So early the next morning, Michael, Matt, and a secret cabal of international journalists, editors, political satirists, academics, and other very serious people whose names I'm not at liberty to mention, gathered in an undisclosed location and spent the better part of the day sharing harmful misinformation and strategizing about how to defeat or marginally disrupt the network of governments, intelligence agencies, global corporations, NGOs, and so-called disinformation experts known as the censorship industrial complex. There were delegates from the United States, United Kingdom, Ireland, Germany, Italy, Spain, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, and other nominally sovereign countries. This heretofore clandestine meeting was conducted in what appeared to be a World War II era air raid shelter, right?
And 7 years ago.
A World War II era air raid shelter that had been converted into a private BDSM club under the military level OPSEC protocols, i.e. the meeting was conducted according to
They still use that alarm though at the BDSM club.
Yes, they certainly did.
That one, that air raid.
That's that the meeting was conducted according to the protocols, not the architectural conversion. So it's not a BDSM meeting. No. I'm not entirely sure why that was. We weren't doing anything even remotely illegal. However, given that I'm under criminal investigation here in Germany for tweeting the cover art of my book and the IRS's sudden interest in Matt and Kit Clarenberg's recent experience in Luton, perhaps the abundance of caution was warranted. Last thing we needed was the UK thought police goose-stepping in like Basil Fawlty and dragging everyone off to room 101. So good, like so snarky and hilarious, and poke him in the eye. Anyway, that's what I was there for. I had never met most of the people in attendance except online on the double encrypted Russian-backed dark web conspiracy theorist channels where we hatch our right-wing extremist plots to defend people's rights to freedom of speech and engage in other harmful anti-democracy behaviors. I'm still not sure who I actually even met in London, as we were all wearing identical Mickey Mouse masks and speaking through portable voice modifiers. In any secret meeting like this, you have to assume you've been infiltrated.
More than a Nixon mask in there? Come on, bro.
I'm not a crook. Right? After the obligatory arguing about the agenda, we settled in and shared our country reports, which, so unsurprisingly, were all variations on a theme. I won't go into all the details. Michael Schellenberger's nonprofit has been tracking these developments. Matt Taibbi and Racket News are reporting it. Other alternative media outlets like ours are reporting it. Millions of people around the world are talking about it, writing about it, and arguing with each other about it. Your Twitter feed is probably full of it. Alex Guttentag just published a huge article about it. So what exactly is it exactly that is going on? Well, the thing that was horrifying about listening to my colleagues reporting on the state of things in their countries, or rather, the thing that should be horrifying but is becoming a mundane fact of life, is that more or less the same totalitarian program is being rolled out in countries throughout the world. The censorship, the official propaganda, the criminalization of dissent, the pathologization of dissent, I probably said that. The pathologization of dissent. The manipulation of our perception of reality. The coordinated transformation of the world into a smiley-faced neo-Orwellian police state in which politics no longer matters because society's been divided into two basic classes, i.e. the normals, who are prepared to mindlessly follow orders, right? The normies, who are prepared to mindlessly follow orders and parrot whatever official narrative propaganda they're fed, and the deviants or the extremists who are not. Seriously, all satire aside, think about the implications of that. As you sit there in whichever nominally sovereign country you're sitting there reading this in, ask yourself, how and why is this happening? And then ask yourself, why is it happening now? If you do not have answers to these questions, it might behoove you to attempt to come up with some. That is basically what I've been trying to do in a satirical and sometimes not so satirical manner in these Consent Factory essays for the last 7 years. I'm not going to summarize it all again here. I've done that repeatedly in my essays and books. I did it last time I visited London to give a talk at the Real Left conference. I think we covered that and talked about that when he wrote an article about that too. I did it again at this gathering in London, and it did not go over all that well. The thing is, most of us are laser focused on the trees that we cannot see the forest. But our adversaries see the forest. They see the forest like fucking eagles. They own the fucking forest and everything in it. While we hop like squirrels from tree to tree, distracted from distraction by distraction, from limited hangout by limited hangout, they're building a big fucking fence around it all and deploying the forest ranger, whatever the hell they're called, that guy's called. Somebody with German would be able to.
Sturmbetung.
That's right. That's a good one. I'm not even going to try to butcher that one. So
God bless you.
So CJ says, I'm reminded of that infamous Karl Rove quote, and he was referring to the USA, of course, but it was really global cap, i.e. the corporatocracy that he was really speaking for, whether he knew it or not. That's not the way the world really works anymore. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And when you're studying that reality judiciously, as you will act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out.
This guy sounds high.
Oh, dude, Karl Rove was the worst.
And we're in one reality, man, and we got like two realities within a reality, man.
Dude, Karl Rove was the architect of the Bush administration. He created George W. Bush. So he says, we're today's actors, and all of you will just be left to study what we do. He says, so CJ says that if we don't want to end up studying that reality, the global pathologized totalitarian reality that is becoming subtly and not so subtly implemented simultaneously in countries throughout the world, at some point we'd better come up with some actual answers to those questions above. The supranational, globally hegemonic, post-ideological system of power that runs our world, whatever you need to call it, has answers to those questions. It has a story. It has a story about a beneficent global empire governed by authoritative scientific experts who are trying to save the world from whatever and protect everyone from disinformation and harmful speech, ideas, and so on. And like every good story, it has an antagonist, us. We are the official enemy, right, left, libertarian, anarchist, Islamic, fundamentalist, Christian fundamentalist. It doesn't make one iota of difference. There is only the empire and those who oppose it. The empire does not give a shit why. Basically, it is conducting a global clear and hold operation, wiping out internal resistance and establishing ideological uniformity. It could not care less what you think you believe in. All it wants is mindless obedience and rote repetition of its propaganda. That's how totalitarianism works. And there I go with my story again. If anyone has a different story that makes sense of my last 7 years, and arguably the last 30 years, honestly, I'd love to hear it. My story fills me with fear and loathing. But the only other coherent story I'm hearing at the moment is the Empire story, and I think we all know how that one ends. Actually, I'm not really sure how that one ends, but it's probably not going to be good for any of us. I can tell you that for sure.
He could have thrown a disestablishmentarianism in there to really trip you up.
He almost did, but so he had to add like a sub thing. So he says some readers seem to be a bit unclear about the nature of the story I referred to in the piece. It's about the history of the post-Cold War period, the early 1990s up till now. And he presented an extremely condensed version of it at a conference in London in April, and here it is again. And there's the link. Again, we covered that. We read that article about the new normal. So in order to understand, so he quotes from that about, from the article, and then he says, let's see, after that, yeah, it's all just a quote from that article.
Intramural competition. Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of saying this, though. This is like a lot of this seems like, and I think we've both said this to each other and others multiple. Like, it's not necessarily that it's these fancy conspiracy anything, or it's really just corporations doing what corporations do, except they've all made a front, essentially, of the 1% that are willing to have the rest of us die off as long as they're going to be all right.
Well, so, they also have bought off the government, and now you've got these massive hedge funds, these consolidated organizations like you're talking about, Vanguard, BlackRock.
Yeah.
And then it spreads out. It's
the World Economic Forum.
Well, and then beyond that, you've got the Council
the Center for Inclusive Capitalism.
Well, more than that is the Council for Foreign Relations. The CFR is really at the center of all of that. I don't know if you've ever seen that graphic, that the World Economic Forum and all these different things basically branch off of that. Censorship industrial complex gets close to it.
A new world order. A new world order. The Illuminati.
That's right, Dave Burt. Crazy, crazy shit over on the Rock Fan. Thank you. Good to see you over here. Mouse H. Mouse SF. That's who I was talking about. Zombie in the air. What's going on? Infuriating that normies buy this misinformation crap. It is crazy.
Zombie in the air.